Today on Network Africa, in what could be a final move towards salvaging the peace deal, South Sudan's president asked his vice, Riek Machar, to return to Juba. Ghana's parliament says no to a plan to move the country's presidential election from December the 7th to November the 7th. Plus, Waka the musical opens in London. Hello everyone, I am BC Adebayo. There's relative calm in the South Sudanese capital, Juba, despite a few lootings here and there. But President Salva Kiir is showing he's determined to make a peace agreement signed last year work by every means possible. He has reached out to First Vice President Riek Machar, who left the capital shortly after the call for a ceasefire, asking him to return. Machar left the capital but denied he was preparing for a resumption of fighting that plunged the country into a civil war back in 2013. The appeal was made in a statement which the president said he would expect a response in 48 hours. Now, while both parties are insistent on maintaining that agreement in August, President Kiir is, however, wary of outside intervention in the current situation, opposing an AU plan to deploy soldiers to South Sudan with a more robust mandate to maintain the peace. He said last week the United Nations mission in South Sudan troops was sufficient. Meanwhile, the UN is reporting that 26,000 citizens have fled the fighting and are now camped in neighboring Uganda. The UN says majority of them are women and children. This is happening despite a ceasefire holding in the capital and both parties promising to uphold the peace agreement. The new refugees say fighting has continued and that in the Magwi area, gunmen are looting properties and recruiting young men and boys. Meanwhile, local media in Somalia is reporting a Burundian army base on the outskirts of Mogadishu has come under attack of suspected Al-Shabaab militants. The soldiers are part of the African Union mission in Somalia. Details are still sketchy. For one, we do not know how many soldiers have been killed or the number of those wounded. Al-Shabaab attacks on AU soldiers have been rather frequent on Friday. Officials in Somalia said 2 Kenyan soldiers and 1 Somali soldier were killed during an ambush by the militants. Al-Shabaab claims it killed 10 Kenyan soldiers in the attack and destroyed 3 military vehicles, despite the government's figures. Back here in Nigeria, the army says 19 soldiers and 3 civilian JTF members have been wounded in an ambush by Boko Haram terrorists in Borno State. A statement by the acting spokesman for the army explains that the attack occurred while the troops were returning to their defensive locations after operations to clear remnants of the insurgents at Gurogogo village and its environ. It adds that the operation led to the destruction of the terrorist makeshift camps and recovery of various weapons, including an anti-aircraft gun, an armored personnel carrier, as well as motorcycles used by the militants. In the meantime, the army says a number of its troops are missing after they ran into an ambush by Boko Haram terrorists in Borno State. Well, the army has vowed to ensure that everyone involved in the operation is accounted for and has dispatched special forces personnel to locate the missing troops. Security expert Dr. Onai Homo joins us now to give us a better understanding of the fight against Boko Haram in Nigeria's northeast. Dr. Homo, thanks for joining us.
Thank you very much.
Did you ever think this situation was possible in the fight against insurgency?
Well, it's a battle. In a battle situation, there's a lot of fluid. That means it flows and ebbs. Now, the military has been pressing its advantage very well, and it's been in fresh pursuit of Boko Haram elements, and it's been clearing a lot of villages of Boko Haram elements. For example, just last Tuesday here, they went into Kukawa local government area to a village called Gangari, and they killed about 42 Boko Haram fighters and rescued 38 women and 42 children. Now, last week, there were similar successes. So this kind of a situation where troops coming back from such operation, that operation is called Operation Tiger Claw. That is where they are clearing Boko Haram elements. Troops coming back from Operation Tiger Claw sometimes run into these kinds of terrorist ambushes. Because remember, the terrorists have not been fully routed. It's still a work in progress. But suffice to say that the military is making very good progress, and that's the good news here. But I'm sorry to hear that some of our boys in this particular, the last encounter here, and hopefully they will be found very soon by Special Forces elements.
Oh, as the military continues to fight against these militants, of course, the militants do fight back, but do you think that the military could possibly quash them completely?
Well, I think it depends. First of all, quashing them completely is going to take a little bit of time than we are giving ourselves, the kind of time frame. Because the kind of very upbeat government rhetoric is good because it heightens the morale of the military. But we don't want a situation where it will lull people into a false sense of security and then end up creating more casualty for us. For example, we've seen Boko Haram, they went out and took that town, the border town, Bosso, from Nigerian troops. And that Bosso was protected by MNJTF forces, that's multinational joint task force forces, including Nigerian troops. And we took some casualties in that particular encounter where Boko Haram killed 32 Nigerian troops. So what I'm trying to say is these guys, they are still very lethal. It's like a wounded animal. It's wounded, but it's not dead, and it can still bite, and it can, cause a lot of havoc. So I think what would happen now is for our military planners, our military strategists, to focus attention on how to completely rout these guys. Since there's a kind of a vice on Boko Haram now, with the Cameroonians, the Nigerians, and the Chadians pressing on their end, if Nigeria can now intensify its efforts to rout them, particularly from the rural areas, then of course we'll have a better success. But it's not enough to control only the highways and concede the rural areas to Boko Haram elements.
Oh, talking about intensifying efforts here, the Minister of Interior, retired Lieutenant General Abdurrahman Dambazao, recently announced that the military has defeated Boko Haram. What do you make of this claim?
Well, I think the thing to ask yourself, Ma, is what does the recent attack make of that claim? Apparently, it says that it's a little bit overstated. Yes, we know that they have defeated them to the extent that they cannot take territories, they are not holding territories, even though from time to time we hear that they are holding a couple local governments again in Borno State or wherever. And of course, those claims are quickly disputed or controverted. But, the thing to say right now is that we are winning. The tide of battle is in our favor. But don't forget, there's something called fluidity of battle. That's when we are taking losses. When it's flowing, that's when it's going in our favor. So, but I just want to say that we should probably be temperate in our pronouncements about the conclusion of this battle. If we are temperate, if we are measured, then of course these kinds of things will not come as embarrassment. Because if you say you have won the battle and Boko Haram is taking out your people, then certainly there's a problem somewhere.
All right, thanks very much, Dr. Ekomo, for joining us on Network Africa.
Thank you very much, madam.